Hi there! Today we're making this wire wrap pendant, which is perfect if you've got that one special bead you want to show off. And for more techniques and tutorials like this one, hit that subscribe button. Now let's get wrapping. In this pendant I'm using an 8mm bead, but you could also use a bead that's larger or smaller than that. And in addition to the bead, I'm using 1mm diameter copper wire, which is 18 gauge, and 0.4mm diameter copper wire, which is 26 gauge. And the tools needed are round nose pliers, flat nose pliers, nylon jaw pliers if you've got them, wire cutters, and an awl. We're starting with two pieces of the 1mm or 18 gauge wire that are 30 centimetres or 12 inches long. And with the first of these wires, I want to find the middle point and create a very small loop in the centre. So I'll use my round nose pliers to start this. Now I want to make this as small as I can as I'm just using it for embellishment. But you could make a larger loop and hang another bead from it if you wanted. And I'll just use my flat nose pliers to make that even smaller still. And then I want to position the wires in a fairly acute V shape. This expands that loop out again a little bit so you can squeeze it back together. And keep manipulating the wires until you're happy. And with the second of the frame wires, we're going to bend that into a fairly sharp curve. You can use your flat nose pliers for this, but I'm not bending it around the edge of those pliers. I'm just using them to hold the wire and keep the sides straight. And then just make sure those wires mirror the first V shape. Now we're ready to start weaving, and I've got 2.5 metres here of the 0.4 or 26 gauge wire, which is just over 8 feet. I want to find the centre of that wire and then coil it around the bend we just made in the second frame wire. I'll coil one side, then turn it around and coil the other side. And I'm just coiling up to where I can attach the other frame wire. So on this wire it's about 9 coils. Then we can position the other frame wire on the top and wrap twice around both wires. Don't worry too much about where that top wire is at the moment. Once we've got 2 wraps, I'll put the weaving wire through between them to help hold it together. Then we can position that top wire where we want it and wrap both wires on the other side and take the weaving wire through between them. Now's a good time to check that that top wire is going to sit where you want it to and adjust the wires if necessary. And then I'll get back to the weave, then coil 7 times around the wire we just added with the loop on it. Then wrap the weaving wire twice around both wires then 7 times around that one wire. And this 7-2 weave is going to be the weave we use for the body of the pendant. Once we've got one side started, we can then do the same weave on the other side. Again, we're coiling the wire with the loop on it and wrapping 7 times around one wire and then twice around both wires. And we need to wrap the wires up to where we're going to add the bead. Now I've wrapped 2.5 groups of those 7-2 weaves. So I've got 3 lots of the wraps over 2 wires on each side, and I'm halfway through the 7 wraps on 1 wire. And I use my nylon jaw pliers to settle the weave and flatten those wires into one plane. And then to add the bead, we're just going to thread those two weaving wires through opposite sides of the bead so they cross in the middle. And then pull them through to sit the bead in place. I want to make sure those two wires are taut. And then we'll continue the weave up both sides of the pendant. I've wrapped a couple of sets of the weave on both sides, which takes me to around where I think the wires will cross. Now we're ready to start creating the crossovers, and I want to bend each side of the weave over the top of the bead and twist them as I go, and I'm twisting them outwards. I want to twist them through 180 degrees, so what's facing the back will be facing forwards. But it's easier to start by twisting 90 degrees as you're making the curve, and then a further 90 degrees at the top. You can use your flat nose pliers to help make that twist, and I find these narrow ones are really useful for that. And you can also use them to help adjust the shape. I'm happy with it sitting just there, and I want both sides to be wrapped up to where they cross. So I'm just going to add a bit more wrapping both sides to get to that point. Now to fix the two sides together, I'm going to swap the weaving wires over. So the weaving wire from the back I'm going to take through the middle of the front two wires, and the weaving wire from the front I'll take through the back two wires. Then I'll just continue the weave as before, and I'm going to wrap 3 sets of the weave up both sides. So we're now ready to make the second crossover, and of course this time it will be a full loop. We're going to twist each side again, and I want the twist to continue in the same direction as before. So the wires are twisting around that way, and I'll continue twisting. This is a fairly small loop, so it can be a bit fiddly, but just take your time, use your flat nose pliers to help, and adjust the wires until you're happy with the shape and both sides are fairly symmetrical. And then we're going to swap the weaving wires over as before, taking the front weaving wire through the back 2 wires and the back weaving wire through the front 2 wires. Then we'll continue the wrapping on both sides, and I'm going to do 3 sets of the weave again. And then we're ready to bend and twist the wires one more time, continuing the twist in the same direction, making the loop and adjusting the shape until you're happy with it. The only difference this time is we're not fixing those 2 weaves together by swapping the wires. We're now ready to create the bail, and I'm going to use the outer 2 wires for this. So I'll use my flat nose pliers to bend those wires upwards. I want the other 2 wires to be in front of those bail wires, so I'll just carefully move that wire forwards. They will still be crossing, and I'll bend them forwards out of the way. To weave the bail, I'm going to take one of the weaving wires, doesn't matter which one, and wrap it 3 times around both of those bail wires. I'll then wrap 3 times around one of the wires, then 3 times again around both of the wires. Then I'm going to move across and wrap 3 times around the single wire that I didn't wrap before. And I'll continue wrapping 3 times around both wires, 3 times around one wire, 3 times around both wires, and 3 times around the other wire for the length that I want to make the bail. And I think a total of 6 of the double wraps should be fine for that. I'll use my nylon jaw pliers just to settle those wires, and then I can form the bail by just bending it forwards and then gently curving it around. You could use a mandrel to get the shape if you wanted. Then I'll kick out those wires just where the weave ends and finish shaping the bail. And I'll fix that into place by taking the weaving wire through to the front, around one of the weaving wires, and then back to where it started. I'll then bend those bail wires to each side so I can use them for the embellishment. Now I need to decide what to do for the embellishment. And I'm going to make this pendant symmetrical, but it can be quite difficult to make both sides even. So if you prefer, you can take one of the wires over to the other side and have an asymmetric embellishment. But I'm going to try bending this wire downwards and sitting it about there. But I think I'll cross the other one through it. I quite like that, but I think for interest I'll just coil one of the wires to give a bit of a different texture. I'll just pull them back outwards for now, and I'll coil the wire that's coming from the back. So I've got that wire that I wove the bail with, and I'll just coil around for probably about 1 inch. Then I'll do the same for the back wire on the other side. Then I'll bend each of the wires into position. And when I'm happy with the shape, I'm going to put a small loop in the end of each of the wires. And I'll cut off the excess. I'll then do the same for the other side. And I have taken my time to keep adjusting until I'm happy with the shape. Now we just need to fix these into position. So I'll continue the coil around the loop until it gets to where the loop meets the wirework. Then I'll use the awl to make a space in the wirework and thread that weaving wire through. And then back over to coil around that loop a couple more times. Then I'll take the weaving wire over to the second loop, which will fix the 2 loops together. Coil around that a few times, and then take the weaving wire through the wrapped section again. I'll then take the weaving wire back and coil a couple more times around that second loop to hold everything together. Then I can just trim off the excess weaving wire. Then I'll do exactly the same the other side, coiling that weaving wire around, attaching the lower loop through the wrapping, moving the weaving wire across to the other loop, attaching that to the wrapping, and then coiling another few times before trimming. And that completes the pendant. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, and don't forget you can subscribe to my channel and head over to my website for more hints, tips and projects. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.